Okay, welcome everyone. Good afternoon. Always a pleasure to learn together as part of Drisha's Sefira Zman and all of Drisha's classes. This class is again discussions on the Parashah. This week we have Emor with Daphna Nizan. Daphna Nizan is the Overseas Program Coordinator at Yeshivat Drisha. She holds a BA in Tanakh, Talmud, and Jewish art, as well as an MA in Talmud and teaching certification from Bar Ilan University. She has worked for the Luckstein Center for Jewish Education and taught in MMY, TVA, and the Drisha High School summer program, and the Hartman High School for girls, as well as many summer camps in Camp Moshava. She has studied in Midrashet Lindema, Matan, and is a graduate of the Advanced Gemara program in Migdal Oz. In addition to studying in their Halakha program for 3 years, she's currently learning and coordinating the overseas program at the yeshiva. And with that, I'll turn this to you, Daphna. Just unmute, Daphna. Yeah, perfect.
Okay, that works. Good. We can hear. Awesome. Okay. Thank you, Evie. It's really great to be back here, and I'm really excited about this shiur. These are things, some of my favorite things to teach, and I didn't even realize that they were both in the same parsha, and then I really arbitrarily picked Parashat Emor and then opened it up to see what was in there, and I found that both of these things are in the same parsha. So I said, okay, I have to talk about this, even though it might be a little more of a Gemara shiur than a Tanakh shiur. So I apologize in advance. It's probably people that will explain everything. But that's really what I do in my day to day, is more Gemara than Tanakh. So I feel very comfortable. Okay, so Parashat Emor is a really jam-packed parsha. So we'll just do a quick overview of what we find in the parsha, and then we'll focus in on two things, one at the beginning and one at the end. Okay, so the parsha starts off with some special laws pertaining to the Kohanim, to who they can or cannot become impure, laws pertaining to their bodies, who they're allowed to marry, the special punishment for the promiscuous behavior of the daughter of the Kohen, which we're going to get back to. It then continues to compare the Kohen Gadol to the regular Kohen. It lists a bunch of blemishes that would disqualify a Kohen from serving in the Mikdash. Then it goes on to state in which situations a Kohen would be prohibited from partaking in eating of the Kodashim, and who is considered to be close enough to the Kohen to be permitted to eat this food. The next section delineates blemishes which would render an animal unfit for sacrifice and other laws pertaining to korbanot. Then we have Perek Kaf Gimel, known as Parashat HaMoadot, which lists all of the holidays, their dates, the special laws, their korbanot. Perek Kaf Daled begins with a repetition of the law to light the Ner Tamid, and with detailing the laws of the Lechem Panim. And then we have a story of the Mekalel, the blasphemer, who in the midst of a fight curses Hashem. And the Psukim tell us that it wasn't clear what the ruling should be regarding this person. Hashem tells Moshe to remove him from the camp, for everyone who heard this curse to do smicha on him, and then to stone him. And this punishment gets canonized as law. And juxtaposed to this is a list of laws pertaining to a person who damages or kills, injures or kills another person or an animal. And it says a person who kills a person shall be killed. One who kills an animal must pay nefesh tachat nefesh. One who injures a person should have the same thing done to him. We'll get back to this. And the parsha ends with the judgment of the blasphemer being carried out. Okay, so that's just general overview. Now, I want to focus on two laws which are found in the sections which kind of bookend the parsha. The first one is in the section at the beginning, where it talks about laws pertaining to the Kohanim. And the second is in the last section, where we have the laws of injuring and killing people. And I chose two things because I'm very, very interested in the relationship between Torah Shebichtav and Torah Sheba'al Peh. How these two things relate to each other, how we get from the Torah Shebichtav to the actual halacha that we keep today, and the interpretive choices that Chazal sometimes make, which teach us about their values and how they see best to take what's written in the Torah Shebichtav and to apply it into our world. And we have two really great examples of this, which just happened to me in the same parsha. So I'm going to share the source sheet. Okay, we see my page? Yes? Yes, good. Okay, great. All right, so the first example it can be found in Perek Kaf Aleph, Pasuk Tet. And this is the promiscuous daughter of the Kohen. So what does the pasuk tell us? Bat ish kohen ki tachel liznot et avia hi mechalelet be'esh tisaref. Okay, so this is the daughter of a Kohen who defiles herself through harlotry. Et avia hi mechalelet. So first of all, what is this ki tachel liznot? What exactly is that referring to, and what is her status, which seemingly is breaking halacha? So Rashi tells us, כי תחל לזנות, כשתתחלל על ידי זנות, שהייתה בה זיקת בעל וזינתה. What's the problem? Is that she had some kind of a link, a relationship, a marital relationship to a man. So Omin ha'erus and vizinta, and she slept with somebody else, right? So what is this relationship? Omin ha'erusin, Omin ha'nisuin. Either she was engaged or she was married, but regardless of which one it was, right? She's not single, and even when she's engaged, she has the status of a married woman. Okay, so they're not sure, they have a machloket if she's married or if she's engaged, doesn't really matter, because either way, hakol modin, everybody agrees, shelo dibra katuv b'priya, this is not talking about a single woman, okay? Et aviha hi mechalelet ba'esh tisaref. She is not only defiling herself, but she's defiling her father, right? Because she is the daughter of a Kohen, she has a special status. Rashi says, "Et avia hi mechalet chilala ubistat kavodo." She defiled, or what's the word in English? Disgraced her father's kavod. Shomrim alav aror shezo yalad, aror shezo gidel. Right? Cursed is this guy who gave birth to this, this girl who acts this way. And so, whereas a regular woman who commits adultery, she would receive the punishment of, so first of all, someone who commits adultery deserves a death penalty. A regular woman who commits adultery would receive chenek, death by choking. And because of her special status as the daughter of the Kohen, she's going to get a more chamor punishment, a more strict type of death, which is sreifa, right? If you look in the Mishnah in Sanhedrin, we see that they're listed in order of stringency, of how bad the death is, I guess, right? Arba'a mitot nimsaru lebeit din. There were four types of death penalty that the Beit Din uses, or they have a masoret to use. Skila, sreifa, hereg, v'chenek. So in this order is the order of, I guess, intensity. Skila, stoning, sreifa, burning, hereg, decapitation, chenek, choking. And there's a machloket about which ones are really worse. Rabbi Shimon says, no, it should be the order like this: sreifa, skila, chenek, v'hereg. So according to Rabbi Shimon, sreifa is even the worst. Versus what the Tana Kama says that it's second. But either way, sreifa is more chamor than chenek, and she gets that because of her special status as the daughter of the Kohen. Now we'll see that this is only one of two cases where someone receives death by burning. So we see that in this Mishnah over here, in Mishnah and Sanhedrin. Elu hein hanisrafim. These are the ones who are burnt. Haba alisha ubita, someone who sleeps with a woman and also with her daughter.
Daphna, I'm
Ubat.
sorry. Can I
Yes.
interrupt you for a second? I just want to make sure that you see the question in the chat. Do you want me to read it?
No, I'm sorry. I'm not
It
looking
says,
at it.
no,
The
that's okay.
Makinde.
Is it okay to ask you a quick question?
Yeah.
Zella asked, what punishment does the male partner receive?
Oh, interesting. So he receives chenek. So he gets the punishment of the. I'm almost 100% sure. Right? Zomame bat. Yeah, this is the case. Zomame bat kohen uboala. The people who are. So yeah, he gets the regular punishment of chenek, and she gets burned. Good question. Okay, so we see that this is only one of two cases that get so. And please stop me as we go if you see there's more questions, because I'm not looking at the chat. I apologize. I'm looking at a lot of things at once. Okay, so ubat kohen shezimta, and then they learn out from the first one isha ubita to a whole bunch of other cases as well, but these two main cases. And then that Mishnah, interestingly, goes on to talk about who gets hereg, and within that Mishnah, you'll see just at the end here, it talks about someone who is makeh et chavero. Now here, this is in the context of death, but it's interesting that like we find these two things also in the same Mishnah. I don't really know what the actual connection is between them, other than that this is said in the context of killing, and we're just talking about the different deaths in their order. But it's interesting that also in our parasha we have this punishment of sreifa and also the makeh chavero. Okay, so I apologize in advance for the morbidity of this section, but if I were to ask you, how do you think the punishment of sreifa looked? What would you say? Yeah, Sandra.
I'd say dramatic.
Pretty
You say
dramatic, but
because
yeah.
we're looking at optics. We're looking at optics. I mean, there's a reason why they burned witches. There's a reason why they burned Rabbi Akiva in a Sefer Torah. I mean, there's a reason why burning is considered, a punishment. And I think to a large extent, it's slow, it's painful. They want to hear screams, and and it's dramatic for the onlookers.
How do you picture them actually burning the person? You talked about burning witches, so
well, tie them up to the stake. You put the kindling at their feet. It increases the terror and fear in the person, and they burn it. You die slowly, and it's tough stuff.
Yeah.
So I think dramatic and painful. Dramatic and painful.
Yeah. So I agree that when you read the psukim and it says, burn her, that seems like the pshat of how you burn a person, right? You tie them up to something and you set a fire and you let it burn them from the outside.
But can I just a point? And that's one of the things that stays in my mind about talking Tanakh as well as Gemara is the story of Yehuda and Tamar. I mean, that's the first thing he says. There's no proof, there's no trial. He just says, take her out and burn her. And I've written about this. I've taught it. I've thought about it for decades. And it's a very impossible thing to get past.
Yeah, I agree. It's really it's difficult. So we're going to be surprised then if that's how it's our gut to think about sreifa. We'll be surprised when we read the Mishnah, which describes how it was actually done when the mitzat beitin was carried out, and it's not what we would think. So let's read the Mishnah.
Can I say something? Isn't this also destroying the body and the image of God? Isn't that somewhat problematic in this?
Well, we're going to see that it's not actually what Sandra said.
Okay.
The Joan of Arc images to the contrary.
Right?
I mean, there's a reason that the Christians really promulgated the Joan of Arc imagery everywhere. They wanted to terrorize and put the fear of God into everyone's heart and throat.
Yeah.
Okay,
so
well,
we're going to come back to the throat.
We want to hear what the Mishnah says. Was this a killing baked in? Did it do more than 1 in 70 years? I mean,
yeah. Well, that's a whole other shear. which I also love to teach. Really, Sanhedrin is my favorite masachet, and I love this stuff.
Okay, here we go.
It is also morbid though. Okay, so let's see the Mishnah. Mitzvat HaNisrafim. How did it look? Hayu mishatinoto bazevel ad arkubotav. They would stand the person up in dung up to their knees. Okay, picture this. V'notnin sudar kasha letoch haraka v'korecho tzavaro. They would tie around his neck a rough scarf inside a soft scarf. Tie that around his neck. Ze moshech etzlo v'ze moshech etzlo ad sheputech et piv. Okay, now the witnesses are the ones who carry this out, so each one would pull a little bit in their direction to force his mouth open. Then what would they do? Umadlik et haptila. They would light the wick. What is this ptila and what is this madlik? So the Gemara, we'll just go down here for 1 second. My ptila, what is the wick? Amar Rav Matna ptila shel avar, a bar of lead. Okay, so they would heat a bar of lead. Rashi says they would melt it. And what would they do with it? Zorka letoch piv. They would pour it down the person's throat. V'yoredet letoch me'av. V'chomeret et b'nei me'av. It would go down the person's throat. I see, Sandra, you're saying something, but you're on mute, so we can't hear. Still can't hear. You have to unmute yourself. Do you want to say something?
Yeah, what I was saying is, were you implying that what we were about to read was going to mitigate the fact that it isn't just lighting a fire and letting them die? I mean, were you trying to say to us that it was less harmful, painful, visually?
That's what they're going to argue. That's what they're going to argue.
I mean, I really have nothing to say to that. I think that the facts speak for themselves.
Well, so we'll see.
I think it's misogynistic, but I'm not even going to go into this.
The whole thing.
It makes sota. It makes the sota ritual look humanistic.
So this is a question about all of Bito Beitin in general, but you'll see what Chazal are trying to do here, at least what they attempt to do. Now you may not agree. You might say in the end this is worse, but from their perspective, it's better, and we'll see how they explain it. Okay, so it's poured down their throat. It basically burns them from the inside. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Afhu imek biyadam lo hayu mekayimim bo mitzvat sefira. Rabbi Yehuda says this doesn't make so much sense in terms of how you got his mouth open, because what would happen if they would pull too hard and then they would just end up choking him, so you wouldn't be doing mitzvat sefira, you would be doing chenek. So we don't want to risk that because we have to do mitzvat sefira here. So he gives a different way of how we would open up their mouth. Ela putchim et piv bitzvat. We force his mouth open with tongs, I guess. Tongs. And then we would do the same thing. And then we have Rabbi Eliezer ben Sadok, who says, actually, I remember an actual case where there was a bat kohen shezinta, and what did they do? They did how they used to burn witches. No, they actually tied her up and put the branches around her, and they burnt her from the outside. And the Chachamim say to him, that was because the Beit Din of that time was not an expert. They didn't know what the halach was, and that was not the right way to do it. So this whole thing seems strange because it seems to go against, the pshat reading of the Torah when it says, burn the person. How do you burn a person? You burn the person from the outside in, right? So this is very strange. So the Gemara is going to go on and try and determine how we got to this understanding of the punishment of burning, which seems to go against the intuitive, literal understanding of what's written in the Torah. And we're going to say that this is a machloket amoraim between an anonymous opinion, we'll call it the Stan, and Rabbi Elazar, revolving around which biblical story involving burning are we going to liken this to.
Wait,
So
may I just say something? So
Yes.
in this method, the exterior doesn't change.
Correct.
It's only, so it is not kind of destroying the image.
Correct.
Mm.
Correct.
They're melted from the inside
Basically.
or whatever.
Yeah.
Or,
Yeah, and you're gonna see that formulation repeated over and over again here. Srifat neshama v'haguf kayam. It's the inside the neshama that's burned, but the body stays intact.
mm.
Okay.
Excuse me, would that possibly be parallel to the idea of Isha Sotah, where she takes the water inside?
Could be. Yeah, I don't know. I'm sure. Okay. So the anonymous opinion is going to liken this to the story of the burning of Adat Korach using the exegetical tool of Gezerah Shavah. Well, Rabbi Elazar is going to use the same tool to liken this to the story of the death of Nadav and Abihu. So just for a few minutes, we're going to go back and review those psukim so we can see what Chazal are going to do with them. Okay, so let's go down here to Bamidbar. So we're at the end of the story of Korach. And we see here at the very end that a fire comes out from Hashem and consumes the 250 men who brought the incense. Let's just go back here inside. Okay, so the ground opens up, swallows Korach and his people. וידעוהם וכל אשר להם חיים שאולה ותכס עליהם הארץ ויעבדו מתוך הקהל וכל ישראל אשר סביבותיהם נסו לכולם כי אמרו פן תבלענו הארץ. Oh no, it's gonna happen to us. And then what happens? ואש יצאה מאת השם ותאכל את 50 ו200 איש מקריבי הקטורת. Okay, this fire comes out from God and consumes these 250 men who brought the Ketoret. Skip down to the continuation. Okay. Then Hashem speaks to Moshe. He says, Emor el Elazar ben Aharon Kohen, vayam et machtot mi ben hasrifa. He tells Elazar, the son of Aaron, to pick up the fire pans from this srifa, from this fire, or this burning that happened. V'te'esh zrehala ki kadeshu, and you should scatter the coals, I guess. ואת מחטות החטאים האלה בנפשותם, we're going to come back to this word בנפשותם, ועשו אותם רקועי פחים ציפוי למזבח, they're going to hammer them into sheets as a plating for the מזבח, כי קריבום לפני השם ויקדשו, because they become sacred, והיו לאות לבני ישראל, should be a sign to בני ישראל, and he does this, ויקח אלעזר הכהן את מחטות הנחושת, אשר הקריבו השרופים. He takes the machtot, the fire pans, which were brought by the srufim, those who were burned. So we see this word sreifa, which appears here by Korach, and so the stam opinion in the Gemara is going to make a gzerah shavah. Do we know what a gzerah shavah is? Nod your head. Yes. Okay. So it's making the link, saying, "Oh, we have sreifa by us. We're not sure exactly what sreifa by us is. Oh, we see we also have sreifa here." And so whatever was here, we're going to use that and understand our case in that way as well. So that is the story of Korach. So now let's just go to the Gemara for a second, and then we'll do Nadav and Abihu. Okay, so Minalan, right? How do we know that Sreifa, the punishment of Sreifa, is done in this way from the inside out? So the Gemara says, Atia Sreifa Sreifa mi Adat Korach. We derive using Gzerah Shavah from the word Sreifa from the story of Adat Korach. Malahalan Sreifat Neshama v'Guf Kayam. Just as in the story of Korach, what was this burning? This burning was, as you said, Zela, Sreifat Neshama v'Guf Kayam. It's the soul, the inside that was burnt, but the body stays intact. Afkan, so too, our punishment of Sreifa is Sreifat Neshama v'Guf Kayam. Okay, so that's the anonymous opinion. Then we have Rabbi Elazar. Rabbi Elazar says, it's true we do Gzerah Shavah, and it's true we use the word Sreifa, but from a different story. And this is from the story of Bnei Aharon. Malahalan Seifat Neshama V'Guf Kayam. Just like in the story of Aaron, where it's Seifat Neshama V'Guf Kayam, so too, Afkan Seifat Neshama V'Guf Kayam. So we'll go back 1 second to the story of Nadav and Avihu really quick. Okay. So background to this story, right? We are talking about the 8th day of the inauguration of the Mishkan after the 7 days of Miluim. Aaron brings a special korbanot of that day. He blesses the nation. He goes into the Mishkan together with Moshe. Then they bless the nation, and when they come out, the glory of Hashem is revealed to everybody. And the fire comes down and consumes the korbanot. And then here in Perek Yud, so ויקחו בני אהרון נדב ואביהו איש מחתתו ויתנו בהם אש וישימו עליה קטורת ויקריבו לפני השם אש זרה אשר לא ציווה אותם. Okay, so they take their fire pans, they put fire, they put ketoret, and they offer this to Hashem. ותצא אש מלפני השם ותאכל אותם וימותו לפני השם. Okay, this fire comes out from Hashem and consumes them, תאכל אותם. Vayamutu lifnei Hashem, and they die before God. And we're just going to skip down to the last pasuk because this is where we have the word sreifa. Right? V'achem kol beit Yisrael yibku et hasreifa asher sarav Hashem. Okay, so all of Bnei Israel are crying over this sreifa that Hashem burnt. Okay, so he is understanding this story as being Seifat Neshama V'Guf Kayam, and the anonymous opinion is understanding the story of Korach as Seifat Neshama V'Guf Kayam. Now, it's not so clear where they get that from in the psukim that we read, right? So now the Gemara is going to ask, Man diyalif me'adat Korach minale. The one who learns from the story of Korach, Minale, how does he understand, how does he arrive at this conclusion that the burning there was a burning from the inside, but the guf was kayam? So they say, Dichtiv et machtot ha'chataim ha'ele b'nafshotam. Okay, remember we said we're going to come back to that word b'nafshotam. What are they learning out from that word b'nafshotam? Shenishmatam yisrefet v'aguf kam, that it was just the nefesh that was burnt, but the body remains intact. V'idach, well, what does Rabbi Elazar think about that story of Korach? Hahi sreifa mamashi. He understands the story of Korach as being sreifa mamash, the way that we generally think about sreifa. Umay benafshotam. So then what does he do with the word benafshotam, which was the proof word for the anonymous opinion? So he understands it as coming to teach something else, that they were deserving of death because of matters of their nefesh. Rashi explains, based on the continuation of the Gemara, it's connected to the food that Korach used to entice them to join him, and lo mashane. But he understands that story as sreifa mamash. Now it's going to ask in the opposite direction. Well, Rabbi Elazar, who understands the story of Nadav and Avihu as being sreifat neshama v'guf kayam, well, how does he get that from the psukim? It's not so clear from the pshat. So uman diyalef b'nei Aharon minale. Where does he get that from? Dichtiv, as it says there, vayamutu lifnei Hashem ke'en mita. That the word vayamutu is going to indicate that they died ke'en mita, like regular natural death. What happens in regular natural death? A person they just stop breathing, right? But nothing is happening to the outside of their body. Their body isn't being destroyed. Ve'idach, well, how does the anonymous opinion understand the story of Nadav and Avihu? Hahu sreifa mamash havai. No, he understands that story as being sreifa mamash, regular seifa of how we generally think about it. So what does he do with the word vayamutu that appears there? Umay dichtiv vayamutu. Datchil bahu migovai ke'en mitzah. So he learned something else from that word, that the fire began from the inside, but in the end, consumed the whole body. Okay, so before we get to the punchline, so to speak, we'll just do a quick overview on this chart of recapping the opinions of how each one understands the story. Okay, so we have the anonymous opinion, who is learning that Sreifa, our punishment of Sreifa, is from the inside out, from the story of Korach. And he understands that story as Srifat Neshama V'Guf Kayam, from the word bin nafshotam, where their nefesh was burnt but not their body. And he thinks that the story of Nadav and Avihu Dafka was real Sreifa Mamash. And from Vayamutu, they're learning something different, that it started from the inside, but eventually consumed their whole body. Rabbi Elazar, on the other hand, he learns about our punishment of Sreifa from the story of Nadav and Avihu, that it was Sreifat Neshama V'Guf Kayam, and he understands that story because of the word. He understands that story as being that type of Sreifa from the word Vayamutu, that they died kind of like a regular death, meaning that it was just their inside but not their outside. And he thinks that the story of Korach was Sreifa Mamash, and learned something else from the word binafshota. Okay, and now is the kicker. Key. So the Gemara asks, well, man di yalif me'adat Korach, my time lo yalif ibnei Aaron. Okay, the anonymous opinion who learns from Adat Korach, why does he not learn from the other story? Why is he choosing Korach and not Nadav and Avihu? Oh, hahu sreifa mamash havai, because he understands the story of Nadav and Avihu to be real burning. And the Gemara says, V'ne'ach mina, so what? Maybe that's what sreifa really is, right? Maybe sreifa is just the regular way how you picture it in the Pshat, right? It certainly is the Pshat of what's written in the Torah. Why should we prefer the story of Korach, which he understands as internal burning, as the paradigm for how the punishment of burning should look? What's wrong with just saying that it's Sreifa Mamash? Who cares? Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Rava bar Avua, Amar Kra. V'ahavta l'reach hakamocha, bror lo mita yafa. Okay, that's the punchline. What does he say? We have an overarching value in the Torah of v'ahavta l'reach hakamocha, and that teaches us that even when we're dealing with somebody who is liable to the death penalty, when we have a choice of how to do it, which can be anchored in the psukim, right? Because we saw that each one could really be understood both ways. We are going to choose what they call the mita yafa, the quicker and less painful death. Okay? Because we saw again that each set of psukim could really be learned either way. And it was really, really possible to come to the conclusion from both of them that burning here is just regular burning from the outside, where the whole body is consumed. But because of this core value in the Torah, we're going to make this interpretive choice. And even regarding the death penalty, we're going to do it in such a way that reflects that value. Sandra, are you convinced?
No,
Sandra, just unmute. Okay, perfect.
no, I'm not. I actually, I would believe it's not a laughing matter for me. I mean, I just.
I'm not laughing. I was coughing. Sorry.
I understand. I think it's absurdly sadistic, and I think it's extra sadistic vis-a-vis the female. I think that the fact that Zillah had to actually ask what happened to the male counterpart of the adulterer, when there's not even a mention of that. I mean, not only that he got one punishment. Of course, she besmirched her
So
father's.
that's interesting. So what they're saying is not because she's a woman; it's because she is a bat kohen. If she was not a bat kohen,
They're
she would also
saying
get.
that. they're
get
saying,
get
but what do they do? What do they do to her?
So that's what
You're saying that they actually distinguish it by saying, look at this, she does a chalila on her father's reputation. This is why we're doing this to her. But you know, you can choose
it's
to
part of
believe it or not.
her status as being a bat kohen, that for people who are in the kahuna, we have kind of higher expectations for them, so to speak.
Yeah,
But
I understand
it has
what
to do
they're
with her
saying.
kahuna, and not because she's a woman. Because if she wasn't a bat kohen, she would have gotten chenek as well. Okay. So we'll skip the end part here. It's not so necessary, and we'll move on to the next example. Okay, so the next example that I want to look at is Ein Tachat Ein, which appears at the end of the parsha. And this is also a really prime example of a place where Chazal seemingly interpret the exact opposite of what's written in the Torah. Yet we're going to see that they still managed to preserve the voice of the Torah Shebichtav. So let's go to these psukim. Okay, so I see that for once in my life I'm actually running out of time. So we're gonna only go to the relevant psukim. Okay, so I'm here in Yetet. Okay, the ish ki tein mumba amito kasher asad ken yaselo. Okay, someone who injures his friend, what he did to that person should be done to him. Shever tachat shever, ayin tachat ayin, shein tachat shein. Kasher yitain mum ba'adam, ken yinatain bo. Okay, so however he injures his friend, that's what's going to happen to him, and it really gives all the examples. If he breaks someone's limb, he's going to have his limb broken. Take out someone's eye, his eye is going to come out, etc., etc. So that's in our parsha, and this appears earlier also in Sefer Shmot. Okay, so we have this case of Kinatu Anashim Nagfu Shahara. The men are fighting, a woman gets hit. That's the case of the woman being injured. It's not this that's like the jump off. And then it goes on, because that also is talking about if the woman dies, and then from there it goes on to talk about injuries. So if the woman is killed, then the person who kills her gets killed, and then goes on talking about injuries. Ein tachat ein, shein tachat shein, yad tachat yad, regel tachat regel, kiviyah tachat kiviyah, peta tachat pata, chabura tachat chabura. So again, really listing very detailed each example. Whatever you do to somebody else, that's what you are going to get. And we have this formulation also in Sefer Dvarim regarding the laws of the Edim Zomamim. Lo tachos einecha, right? You should not have mercy on this witness who testified falsely in order to get someone else punished. He gets whatever punishment he was trying to give the other person. Nefesh b'nefesh, ayin b'ayin, shein b'shein, yad b'yad, regel b'regel. Okay, so the Torah is very, very clear. Okay, in each of these places, what should be done to the person who injures the other person. It repeats it over and over again using different examples. And yet, when we get to the Torah Sheba'al Peh, we see something completely different. The Mishnah lists 5 different payments that a person is required to pay after injuring another person. Hachovel b'chavero, so this is Mishnah in the 8th parak of Bava Kama. Hachovel et chavero, hachovel b'chavero, someone who injures his friend, chayav alav mishum chamisha dvarim, has to pay for 5 things. Nezek, damage, sa'ar, pain, ripui, medical costs, shevet, his loss of livelihood, and boshet, humiliation. Okay, then it goes through each one and talks a little bit about how we evaluate. So benezek ketzad, how do we pay for nezek? Simat eino katat doshi be'at raglo. Okay, if he did any of these things to his fellow, he blinded him, he cut off his limb, broke his leg. רואים אותו כאילו הוא עבד נמכר בשוק, ושמים כמה היה יפה וכמה הוא יפה. So we evaluate him as if he were a slave being sold on the slave market in terms of his workability, and we evaluate how much this person would be worth, let's say, with an eye, and how much he would be worth without an eye. So that is in terms of nezik. Sa'ar, for pain, kiva o b'shipud o b'masmer v'afilu al tziporno makom she'ino sechabura. So a person burns somebody else using a shipud is a skewer, so I assume like a metal skewer if you're talking about burning, or b'masmer, a nail, afilu al tziporno, even if it's on his nail where there isn't a chabura, there isn't any kind of a mark that's like a permanent mark that's left. עומדים כמה אדם כיוצא בזה רוצה ליטול להיות מצטער על כך. We evaluate what a person would be willing to pay to have that done to him. And okay, ריפוי, medical costs, hikal chayav להרפותו, okay, he has to pay for whatever the medical costs cost. עליבות צמחים, if some kind of a growth comes as a result of it, if it's because of this makah, then he has to pay. Shalom makah, if it's not connected to that, then he doesn't have to pay. If it keeps going away and coming back and going and coming back, he has to pay for it. But once it's fully recovered, then he doesn't have to pay anymore. Shevet, in terms of his loss of livelihood, we see him as if he's a shomer kishurin, he's guarding zucchinis that are growing, meaning a job that does not require anything but just sitting there, like the most basic job, and we pay him, I guess, per day for that job because we've already paid for his workability when we paid for nezik. This is more, I guess, for his time that he's out of work. And sorry, I lost my place. Okay, and boshet, humiliation, that is dependent on who the people are in the story. Somebody who humiliates someone who is naked, who is blind, who is sleeping, they're still chayav to pay for that. The yashen shebeyesh patur, but someone who is sleeping and then inadvertently does something that humiliates somebody else, he is patur because we need this kavanah. That's what they're going to say here in the continuation. Nafal min hagad v'hizik ubiyeh, someone who falls off the roof and then happens to damage something and also humiliate someone in the process. He has to pay for the damage, but not for the humiliation, because of this need for kavanah, because it says the in that pasuk, which is the source of the payment of boshet. Like she actually did this on purpose. We need this kavanah for boshet. Okay, so that is the Mishnah. The Gemara is going to ask the obvious question. What's the obvious question? Right? What happened to ayin tachat ayin in the Torah? Right? The Torah is pretty clear what happens when you measure a person. And this is not only a textual problem, but also it's a little bit of an ethical problem, or maybe a big ethical problem, that number one, the person's not getting midah keneged midah again anymore, right? Once we're turning into something monetary, but really he deserves to have his own eye taken out. And it also is saying that body parts have monetary value, and also maybe an exeret, so that something that comes out of this is that maybe you have a rich person who can, who doesn't care about paying. So what does he care to take out somebody's eye? He'll just, say, okay, well, how much does that cost? Open up the book, and I'll pay that. So how can it be that Chazal are seemingly going against what is clearly written in the Torah? So the Gemara starts off by bringing two possible answers. So let's read from the beginning. So Gemara. Amai, why Mishnah are you talking about 5 payments? Ayin tachat ayin amar Rachamana, right? The Torah says, Rachamana Hashem, the Rahman, said, ayin tachat ayin, ema ayin mamash. It should be ayin mamash, a real eye that's taken out. And the Gemara says, lo salkadata. No, you can't think that that's really what it is. And he brings the Gemara brings a braita. You know what a braita is? Yes. Okay. So brings a braita, which says Yachol sima et eino mesame et eino ki kata et yado mekate et yado shiberet raglo meshiberet raglo. Could it be that a person who blinds is blinded, etc.? Talmud Lamar, the pasuk says makeh adam umakeh behema. Okay, 2 things in the psukim are juxtaposed, one next to each other, one who strikes a person and one who strikes an animal. Ma makeh behema latashlumin, just like when I strike an animal, I pay. Af makeh adam latashlumin, so too when I strike a person and injure him, I pay. So that's one possible answer the Gemara brings. And then it gives an alternative answer. Ve'im nafshecha lomar, or you could say harehu omer, and a different parsha altogether, one that's talking about bi'ir miklat. Says lo tikchu kofer lenefesh rotzeach asher hu rasha lamut. Do not take ransom for the life of a murderer who is deserving to die. And what do they do with this pasuk? They make an inference, and they say, lenefesh rotzeach yetalokeach kofer. You don't take ransom for the life of a murderer. Okay, I can infer from here that things that are not murder, for injured body parts, I can take, and I do take money instead. So those are the first 2 answers. And the Gemara now, it's a very long sugya. We're not going to read all of it inside. We don't have time. But I want to look at, excuse me, some of the other arguments that are brought throughout the sugya in a series of Brighto and later Amoraic statements, which are going to try in various ways to prove that ayin tachat ayin is not meant to be taken literally. Now, some of these arguments are based on logic. Other ones are deemed from the psukim using different interpretive tools. There are 10 arguments, or 10 proofs altogether. We just saw 2 of them. Half of them are going to be accepted. Half of them are going to be rejected. But we're going to see this effort being made to face the Torah shebichtav, but at the same time, in practicality, doing the exact opposite of what it says. And we're going to see that these arguments come in pairs and largely appear in chronological order. So let's go one by one. We're not going to, again, you see I have, dot here because each one has like a few more lines of discussion of how they reject it or they attempt to reject it and then they accept it. We don't have time to go through the entire thing. It took me 2 weeks to teach this in the Jewish summer program 2 years ago with the high school girls. So we're not going to go through all of it, but we're going to list the different arguments. Okay, so we start with Tanya Rabbi Dostai ben Huda, a braita named Rabbi Dostai ben Huda. And this is a classic structure of a midrash halacha, which starts off by telling us what the conclusion is. Then it's going to raise a possibility of maybe it could be understood in a different way, and then tell us, no, it has to be this, and how we learn that. Okay, so he starts off by saying, ayin tachat ayin mamon. Okay, our conclusion is going to be that this is monetary. Ata omer mamon, oino ela ayin mamash. Is it really mamon, or maybe it really is ayin mamash, really taking out his eye? Amarta haresha haita eino shel ze gdola ve'eino shel ze ktana. He'achani korebe ayin tachat ayin. Well, let's say I have a case where somebody has a big eye, somebody has a small eye. I mean, people's eyes are not the same size. And, you could take this literally, or you could also understand it as, people have different levels of eyesight, right? I have a higher number, you have a lower number. So it can never be really, really an equal punishment in most cases. And the Gemara says, maybe you'll say, only in these cases where it's not exactly the same will we take mamon, but in other cases we will do ayin tachat ayin. No, the Torah says mishpat echad yalachem. In this same context of ayin tachat ayin, the Torah says mishpat echad yalachem. You have to have one consistent law, and we're learning, right? Mishpat hashaveh kulchem. It has to be equal and consistent for everybody, and therefore we're going to say that it's always monetary. Okay, so this argument is an argument that's based on logic, and this is ultimately rejected. Okay, let's see the next one. Sorry, I put all the English here, but it is really long. Okay. Tanya Irach, Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai. So this is a 5th generation Tana. And we'll see, like, they come in pairs, so this is a similar type of argument to the previous one. Tanya Irach, Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai Omer, Ayin tachat ayin, mamon starts out the same way. Ata Omer mamon, I know ela ayin mamash, maybe it's actually ayin tachat ayin. Well, haresha haya sume v'sima, kitea v'kita, chiger v'chiger. Okay, so what about a case where it's impossible to do ayin tachat ayin because the person who took out his eye, he himself is blind. So you can't do ayin tachat ayin on him. That doesn't work. And same for somebody who is missing an arm and he takes off somebody else's arm. That doesn't work. The Torah amra mishpat echad yalachem, mishpat hashaveh lekul everybody. So it must be that it's mamon. So again, another argument based on logic, and this is ultimately rejected by the Gemara. Okay, number 5. Devei Rabbi Yishmael Tana Amarkra. It says in the Torah, again in this same context, Kain Yinatin Bo. Now let's just go back to the Psukim. I don't remember. Oh, it's in yeah, okay. Right, Shever tachat shever, ayin tachat ayin, shein tachat shein, kasher yitain mum ba'amito, kain yinatin bo. So that's what we're talking about. Okay, so the pasuk says kain yinatin bo, and what are they going to understand from that? Ve'ein netina ela mamon. It has to be that we're talking about something which can be given.
Monetary.
Right, that can be given from one person to another. You can't give someone an eye, right? So it must be that we're talking about money. Okay, so this is a limud, not from logic, it's a limud from the pasuk. They're taking it out of the pasuk, and although this is less convincing, this one is actually ultimately accepted.
Excuse me, Daphna, which pasuk is it? You ran right through that one. Is it Kain Yinatin Bo? Is that in the which verse is that from?
It's in our Parashah, in Parashat Emor.
So it's in Emor right there. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So the next one again, right, because they come in pairs, the Vei Rabbi Chia Tana. Okay, Rabbi Chia is the transition generation between Tanaim and Amoraim. And he does a similar limud using the pasuk in Devarim. Okay, that's the one that talks about Eidim Zomimim. And it says, Amarkra, Yad B'Yad. Right, Yad B'Yad, Regel Regel, la la la. And so they say, oh, Yad B'Yad, Davar Hanitam Yad Liyad, right? Same thing, it has to be something that can be given from Yad Liyad. Now the Gemara is going to raise an objection. What is Regel B'Regel, la la la? They're going to deal with that. We're not going to go into it. Umayinihu, what is this thing that can be given from hand to hand? Mamon. It must be that we're talking about money. And again, this is a limud from a pasuk, and it's ultimately accepted. Now we have Abaye. Abaye says, so Abaye, fourth generation Amora, is bringing an earlier breta. And ayin tachat ayin, nefesh tachat nefesh. Okay, the psukim say each of these things separately. Velo nefesh ve'ayin tachat ayin, and not a nefesh and an ayin tachat ayin. What does he mean by that? If you were to think that this is real, literal, that can't be, because zimnin la ayin ve'nefesh tachat ayin. Sometimes we'll end up having nefesh ve'ayin tachat ayin. Why? Because ki hechi delahai have I'm reading the wrong one. Debahadi de avarle nafkale nishmate. It could be that in the act of trying to take out his eye, will actually kill him by mistake, and then you end up having nefesh and ayin tachat ayin, and that's definitely not what the psukim are talking about, and so we can't risk that. Okay, so this is a diuk from an inference from the pasuk, which is ultimately rejected. Okay, number 8. You know what? We don't have a lot of time left, I see, so I'm gonna skip number 8 and 9. You can look. You have the English here, so you can look at it yourself if you want. And we'll skip down to Rav Ashi. We'll say from above, Rav Ashi makes a gzira shava from the case of rape, where in addition to him needing to marry her and basically support her financially for the rest of her life, he also pays a fine. Okay, so that's number 10. So up until now, we have seen a lot of blood, sweat, and tears put into proving that ayin tachat ayin Torah is actually referring to monetary compensation. And now we have something surprising. Tanya Rabbi Eliezer Omer. Ayin tachat ayin mamash. Okay, so here we have Rabbi Eliezer, who is Rabbi Eliezer ben Horkanus. So we're going back to the second generation of Tanaim. And we know Rabbi Eliezer ben Horkanus. In Pirkei Avot, we know him as somebody who is dibor sud she'eino me'abed tipa, right? He retains all the knowledge that he learns. He passes on earlier masorot. He listens very, very carefully to the source. And he says, ayin tachat ayin is mamash. What? And the Gemara says, mamash tachat. Could it actually be that he really is saying mamash? And Rabbi Eliezer, lately kechol hani tanai, does Rabbi Eliezer not accept? Does he disagree with everything that's been said up until now by all the Tanaim and all the Amoraim and all this, really blood, sweat, and tears that it's gone into trying to prove this, and from the Psukim themselves? How could it be? So Rabbah suggests one way of understanding Rabbi Eliezer. And he says, Amarabba lomar she'en shamina tov pied. There's no. You didn't understand Rabbi Eliezer correctly. He didn't mean that it's really mamash. What he meant to say is that it is monetary, but we don't evaluate him as a slave. So according to Rabbi Eliezer is maybe expressing some kind of a objection to the fact that we're evaluating the person as a slave, equating him to work power. But Rav Ashi says, Abaye says, well, that might be true, but we don't really have a practical way to do it other than that. Amarli Abaye ela keman ke ben chorin. So then how would you evaluate him? You evaluate him as a free man. Ben chorin mi'it le'dame. Do we have a system for evaluating free men? Doesn't really work. So Rav Ashi gives an alternate understanding of Rabbi Eliezer. Ela amar Rav Ashi, lomar she'en shaminato banizak ela b'mazik. Okay, he says no. We do use the slave market, but we do not evaluate, we don't assess the value of the eye of the victim, rather the value of the eye of the perpetrator. Okay, what's the advantage of this? According to Rav Ashi, okay, so Rabbi Eliezer understands, like everyone else, that this has to be monetary, but how can we do this while still remaining true to the intent of the Torah of Ein Tachat Ein, that this person really deserves to have his own eye taken out? And that is by him having to pay the value of his own eye. Okay, we want to give him the experience of Ein Tachat Ein as if we're about to take out his own eye, and we're about to do it. And he's pleading with the Beit Din, and he's saying, no, don't take out my eye. I'll do anything. I'll pay X, Y, and Z. And that is how we're going to take the original intent of the Torah and translate it into monetary terms, which can be applicable to today. And even if we can't implement the Torah the literal way that it's written, we're still going to preserve that feeling. So we're out of time. I brought another couple of things that we're showing here, but we're not going to have to do it. But basically what we've seen is two examples in our Parsha of how sometimes Chazal are going to use their interpretive power and creativity to interpret the Torah Shebichtav differently from what's written in the Torah Shebal, differently from what's written, and take the ideal of Torah Shebichtav and translate it into a Torah Shebal Peh that is living, that's dynamic, that can be applicable in the real world, while at the same time feels the need to answer to the Torah Shebichtav and tries to preserve its voice and its overarching values. So that's what I got. And we'll stop sharing.
Thank you so much, Daphna. Does anyone have any comments or questions before we close today's session? Let me also check on Facebook if we have any comments. Give it a second. Okay. Thank you so much, Daphna, for this wonderful class. And thank you, everyone else who's always joined us to be part of our learning community here in Drisha. Just remember that the Sefira Zman classes are continuing next week. It's not too late to join. You can sign up at drisha.org/classes. And next week we will have Rabbi Kelsen, who will be teaching on Bahar. And once again, thank you so much to Daphna, and
Thank you.
looking forward to next time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
להתראות.